Welcome to Ian Cinema, your destination for endless entertainment and unforgettable movie moments. Discover exciting films, inspiring stories, and cinematic journeys across every genre. Whether you love action, drama, thrillers, or timeless favorites, there's always something waiting for you here. Sit back, enjoy the experience, and let Ian Cinema bring the magic of movies to your screen. Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, is a 2024 epic post-apocalyptic action film directed and produced by George Miller, who co-wrote the screenplay with Nico Lathuras. The film is the fifth installment in the Mad Max franchise and the first entry that does not center on Max Rockatansky. Instead, it serves as a spin-off prequel to Mad Max: Fury Road, 2015. Telling the origin story of Furiosa. The character is portrayed by Anya Taylor-Joy, with Alyla Browne playing the younger Furiosa. Set years before the events of Fury Road, the story follows Furiosa's journey over more than a decade, beginning with her abduction by the forces of the ruthless warlord Dementis, played by Chris Hemsworth, and ending with her rise to the rank of Imperator. Burke also stars as Praetorian Jack, a military commander who becomes Furiosa's trusted ally. Several cast members from Mad Max: Fury Road return in supporting roles, including John Howard, Nathan Jones, and Angus Sampson, reprising their previous characters. The film opens in the lush, green sanctuary known as the Green Place, offering a striking contrast to the harsh diesel-punk wasteland that has become the signature setting of the Mad Max universe. George Miller originally planned to film Furiosa back-to-back with Mad Max: Fury Road, but the project remained in development for several years due to legal and salary disputes with Warner Brothers, the distributor of Fury Road. Many key members of the Fury Road production team returned for the prequel, including co-writer Nico Lathuras, producer Doug Mitchell, composer Tom Holkenborg, costume designer Jenny Bevan, and editor Margaret Sixel, who is also Miller's wife. Principal photography took place in Australia from June to October 2022. Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga premiered at the 77th Cannes Film Festival on May 15, 2024. It was released in Australian theatres on May 23, 2024, followed by its US release on May 24. The film received widespread critical acclaim, earned multiple award nominations, and was recognized as one of the top 10 films of the year by several critics and publications. Released in 2024, Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga received recognition from the National Board of Review but ultimately became a box office disappointment, earning $174.4 million worldwide against a production budget of $168 million. Set decades after the apocalypse, Australia has become a radioactive wasteland. The Green Place of many mothers remains one of the last surviving sanctuaries, rich with fresh water and fertile land. While gathering peaches, young Furiosa and her friend Valkyrie are discovered by a group of raiders. Furiosa attempts to disable their motorcycles, but the raiders capture her and take her as a prize to their ruthless leader, Dementis. Furiosa's mother, Mary Jabasa, relentlessly pursues the kidnappers to rescue her daughter. Although she manages to reach their camp, Dementis eventually catches up with them. To give Furiosa a chance to escape, Mary stays behind and entrusts her with a peach pit as a reminder of home. Refusing to abandon her mother, Furiosa stays, only to be forced to witness Mary's brutal crucifixion and torture at the hands of Dementis' lieutenant, the Octoboss. Bonded by the loss of his own family, Dementis decides to keep Furiosa and raises her as his adopted daughter, determined never to forget where she came from. Furiosa secretly tattoos a star map to the Green Place on her left arm, hoping it will one day guide her home. Sometime later, the Mentas launches an assault on the Citadel, another powerful settlement with abundant water and crops. However, Immortan Joe's fanatical war boys successfully repel the attack. Instead of continuing the siege, the Mentas uses a Trojan horse-style strategy to seize control of Gastown, the oil refinery that supplies the Citadel with fuel and is ruled by one of Joe's brothers. During the tense peace negotiations that follow, where Joe's brother is accidentally killed, Immortan Joe reluctantly recognizes Dementis' control over Gastown. In exchange for increased food and water supplies, Dementis hands over his organic mechanic and Furiosa. Joe imprisons Furiosa alongside his wives inside a heavily guarded vault. When his son, Rictus, develops an unhealthy obsession with her, Furiosa carefully plans her escape. One night, Rictus secretly frees her with the intention of assaulting her, but she slips away by using a wig made from her own hair, disappearing without a trace. Disguising herself as a mute war boy, Furiosa spends more than a decade rising through the Citadel's ranks. During this time, she helps construct the massive war rig, a heavily armored supply vehicle designed to survive attacks across the lawless wasteland. She plans to escape by hiding aboard the war rig during a supply mission led by Immortan Joe's most trusted driver, Praetorian Jack. Meanwhile, the Octoboss, disillusioned by Dementis' cruelty, breaks away from the Horde and launches a deadly aerial assault on the war rig. His Mortifliers wipe out the crew and destroy Furiosa's hidden motorcycle. Working together, Furiosa and Jack defeat the attackers. Furiosa initially tries to steal the war rig and drive back to the Green Place, but Jack quickly stops her. Impressed by her determination and skill, he offers to train her, provided she helps rebuild his crew. She accepts, eventually becoming Jack's second-in-command and earning the rank of Praetorian. As they spend more time together, Furiosa and Jack form a deep bond and begin planning an escape. Their opportunity seems to arrive when Immortan Joe prepares to attack Gastown, which has fallen into chaos under Dementis' reckless leadership. Joe orders Jack and Furiosa to collect weapons and ammunition from the Bullet Farm, another Allied stronghold. Unbeknownst to them, Dementis has already seized the Bullet Farm and launches an ambush as soon as they arrive. Although Furiosa and Jack narrowly escape, Furiosa suffers a devastating injury to her left arm. Dementis eventually catches them, and Jack is brutally dragged to his death. To survive, Furiosa makes the painful decision to sever her own injured arm, sacrificing the tattooed star map that represented her only path back to the Green Place. A lone survivor watches from a distance as she struggles across the desert before finally reaching the Citadel. Back at the Citadel, Furiosa joins forces with Immortan Joe and the people leader to devise a strategy that turns Dementis' own plans against him. Instead of falling into his trap, they lure him into one at the Citadel, where the war boys crush his biker horde. With her dream of returning home seemingly lost forever, Furiosa shaves her head and fashions a mechanical prosthetic to replace her missing arm. Determined to finish what she started, she relentlessly hunts down the fleeing Dementis. After long and brutal pursuit across the desert, Furiosa finally captures and overpowers him. Furiosa captures Dementis and imprisons him in the Citadel, using his still-living body as fertilizer to grow a peach tree from the seed her mother once gave her. Impressed by her strength and determination, Immortan Joe promotes Furiosa to the rank of Imperator and places her in command of a new war rig. She later encounters Joe's 5 breeder wives in the vault, where she herself was once held captive, and shares a peach from the tree with them. On the night before another supply run, the 5 wives secretly hide inside Furiosa's war rig. Director George Miller and co-writer Nico Lathuris spent more than 15 years developing the screenplay for Mad Max: Fury Road, 2015. During that time, they created detailed backstories for nearly every major character, especially the co-protagonist, Imperator Furiosa. Miller and Lathuris eventually completed a standalone screenplay focused entirely on Furiosa's origins, which actress Charlize Theron used as reference material while preparing for her role in Fury Road. According to Miller, Furiosa most likely takes place after Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, 1985. Although the Mad Max series does not follow a strict chronological timeline, the film's first trailer, released on November 30, 2023, revealed that the story is set 45 years after the collapse of civilization. As early as July 2010, Miller announced plans to film Fury Road alongside the live-action prequel titled Mad Max: Furiosa. However, during pre-production, the team decided to focus solely on Fury Road. At one stage, Miller and Lachy even considered adapting the Furiosa screenplay into an anime film directed by Nihiro Maeda, known for his work on the Animatrix, 2003, Neon Genesis Evangelion, 1995 and 1996, and Porco Rosso, 1992. In May 2015, Miller said that if Fury Road proved successful, he intended to expand the franchise with 2 additional films. Those plans were delayed in November 2017 when Miller's production company filed a lawsuit against Warner Bros. Over a salary dispute related to Fury Road. By July 2019, Miller confirmed that a Furiosa prequel, along with 2 more Mad Max sequels, was still in development. In March 2020, the legal dispute was resolved, allowing Miller and Warner Bros. To move forward with casting the prequel, which he planned to direct after completing 3,000 Years of Longing, 2022. The film was designed to span roughly 15 years, exploring Furiosa's journey after being taken from her homeland and her lifelong determination to return. Several key members of the Fury Road crew returned for the prequel, including composer Tom Holkenborg, costume designer Jenny Bevan, editor Margaret Sixel, makeup designer Leslie Vanderwalt, production designer Colin Gibson, and sound mixer Ben Osmo. Bevan, Sixel, Vanderwalt, Gibson, and Osmo had all previously won Academy Awards for their work on Fury Road. In 2020, Miller revealed that veteran cinematographer John Seale had initially agreed to return. However, after filming 3,000 Years of Longing, Seale chose to retire so he could spend more time with his grandchildren. Cinematographer Simon Duggan stepped into the role for Furiosa. Duggan later explained that Miller wanted an Australian cinematographer and that his name was strongly recommended. Their first discussions focused on Australia's film industry, their shared experiences, and how Fury Road would serve as the visual foundation for Furiosa and not as a blueprint, but as a starting point for creating its own unique style. Village Roadshow Pictures, which co-financed Fury Road, was initially credited in the early marketing materials for Furiosa. Its involvement was also acknowledged in the official press kit and promotional material released around the film's premiere. However, after the premiere, all references to the company were removed from both the marketing campaign and the finished film. In May 2024, Deadline Hollywood reported that Warner Bros. Had financed the majority of Furiosa's budget without co-financing partners such as Village Roadshow, likely due to an ongoing business dispute connected to Warner Bros.' simultaneous theatrical and streaming release strategy introduced in 2021. For the lead role, Miller chose to cast a younger actress instead of relying on digital de-aging technology. He explained that current visual effects still create an uncanny valley appearance that he wanted to avoid. Charlize Theron admitted that the decision was disappointing but said she understood Miller's reasoning. During Australia's COVID-19 lockdown in March 2020, Miller auditioned several actresses for the role over Skype. In October 2020, Anya Taylor-Joy, Chris Hemsworth, and Yahya Abdul-Mateen to officially join the cast, although Abdul-Mateen later left the project because of scheduling conflicts. Miller selected Taylor-Joy after watching an early cut of Last Night in Soho, 2021. He was especially impressed by her audition, in which she performed the famous Mad as Hell monologue delivered by Howard Beale, played by Peter Finch, in Network, 1976. Edgar Wright, director of Last Night in Soho, strongly encouraged Miller to cast Taylor-Joy, telling him, "Do yourself a favor and grab the opportunity to work with her." Miller agreed, saying that Taylor-Joy possesses a rare, timeless quality. In his view, she carries an air of mystery while remaining deeply relatable, making her the perfect choice to bring the younger Furiosa to life. Anya Taylor-Joy received advice from Nicholas Hoult, who had previously played Nux in Mad Max, Fury Road and later worked with her on The Menu, 2022. According to Goran Diklat, who played the Octoboss, director George Miller asks every actor auditioning for one of his films to perform the famous Mad as Hell monologue as part of the casting process. Chris Hemsworth, a lifelong fan of the Mad Max series, grew up watching the films in Australia. He had originally auditioned for the lead role in Mad Max, Fury Road back in 2010, but the part ultimately went to Tom Hardy. Hemsworth later explained that he wasn't yet a big enough start to secure the role, as his breakthrough performance as Thor had not yet debuted in the 2011 Marvel film. To authentically portray the harsh conditions of the wasteland, Hemsworth cut his daily calorie intake to nearly half of what he typically consumes while preparing for a Marvel Cinematic Universe film. Speaking about his character, Dementis, Hemsworth described him as a deeply cruel man driven by purpose rather than mindless brutality. He's a pretty horrible individual. Throughout the film, we kept asking, he's evil, but what's driving him? It's not just sadistic insanity. There's a real purpose behind everything he does. He's always plotting, planning, and thinking 10 steps ahead. Despite Dementis' ruthless nature, Hemsworth believed the character viewed himself as a father figure to Furiosa. I think that's how he sees himself. There's a paternal side to the relationship from his perspective. Furiosa, of course, would completely disagree. In 2021, George Miller cast Alyla Browne as the young Furiosa. Browne had previously worked with him on 3,000 Years of Longing. Miller said she reminded him of a young Furiosa and was impressed by her athleticism after watching her effortlessly perform the splits on set. Tom Burke joined the cast in late 2021 with Praetorian Jack, replacing Yahya Abdul-Mateen. Although much of Burke's role involved driving the war rig, he spent countless hours training in the gym to prepare for the physically demanding action scenes. He explained that he often had to repeatedly jump from the massive vehicle until Miller was satisfied with the perfect take. When the principal photography began in June 2022, the producers confirmed that Nathan Jones and Angus Sampson would reprise their roles from Mad Max, Fury Road. They also announced that Quaden Bales, who had previously appeared in 3,000 Years of Longing after a viral video highlighted his experiences with bullying, would make a small appearance in the film. During production, George Miller cast Lachy Hulme to portray the younger version of Immortan Joe, replacing the late Hugh Keays-Byrne, who passed away in 2020. Miller initially planned to use a body double and record the character's dialogue later through ADR, but Hulme convinced him that he could faithfully recreate Keays-Byrne's distinctive voice and facial expressions. Reflecting on the experience, Hulme said, "When you're working on a George Miller film, there's no pressure because you're surrounded by an incredibly supportive environment." During pre-production, Hulme suffered a motorcycle accident while rehearsing a scene as Rizdale Pell. Following the incident, Miller decided that all motorcycle riding involving the character would instead be performed by stunt rider Chris Matheson. Filming took place across Australia between May and October 2022, with principal photography officially beginning on June 1. George Miller shot the film at several locations throughout New South Wales, including Broken Hill and Silverton for the Stowaway action sequence, Colonel for the Bullet Farm, Tree Hills for the Green Place, Melrose Park for Gaston, and Disney Studios in Sydney for the Citadel. One of the film's biggest action sequences, in which raiders attack the war rig, required an astonishing 78 days to complete. Nearly 200 stunt performers worked on the sequence every day, and the production team nicknamed it Stowaway to Nowhere. Miller described Furiosa as a much smoother production than Fury Road, whose filming had been famously difficult. He also praised Warner Brothers' new leadership for fostering a far more collaborative filmmaking environment than before. Tom Burke revealed that Miller deliberately adopted a different visual style for Furiosa. Unlike Fury Road, which relied heavily on rapid cuts and fast-paced editing. Miller wanted several scenes to unfold in longer, uninterrupted takes. Burke specifically recalled that Miller insisted on filming the emotional confrontation where Dementi's taunts Praetorian Jack and Furiosa in a single continuous shot. Director of photography Simon Duggan and gaffer Shane Conway explained that nearly all of the film's exterior scenes were shot in daylight, making natural sunlight a critical part of the visual design. However, filming coincided with an El Niño +/- weather pattern, bringing heavy rain and winds reaching up to 50 miles per hour. To maintain consistent lighting, the crew relied extensively on powerful artificial lights that recreated the harsh Australian sun. The production used an array of 6 18K HMI lights mounted on 3 heavy-duty telescopic handlers, allowing the crew to illuminate vast outdoor sets while quickly adapting to changing weather conditions. Duggan explained that the lighting setup could cover nearly half the size of a football field, giving the filmmakers complete control over the look of each scene. Whenever clouds interrupted the sunlight, the team simply adjusted the lighting to match the sun's original direction, allowing filming to continue without delays. As Duggan recalled, "George told us we weren't going to wait for the weather to light our sets. We needed to be ready with one solution at all times. That meant we never had to stop shooting and we could just keep going." To make the most of natural sunlight, the filmmakers carefully positioned both the sets and the cameras to capture side lighting or backlighting from the real sun. However, the immense power of the PAR lights provided all the additional illumination they needed. Anya Taylor-Joy praised director George Miller's strong commitment to safety throughout production, but admitted that filming Furiosa was still one of the most demanding experiences of her career. With only around 30 spoken lines in the entire film, she often spent months on set without saying a single word on camera. She reflected on the experience by saying, "I've never been more alone than making that movie. I don't want to go too deep into it, but everything that I thought was going to be easy was hard." When asked what turned out to be more difficult than she had expected, Taylor-Joy simply replied, "Next question, sorry." "Talk to me in 20 years." In a later interview, she explained how she was able to portray Furiosa's emotional depth despite having so little dialogue. According to Taylor-Joy, she connected with the character the moment she read the first version of the script. Although the screenplay changed considerably before filming began, she felt that Furiosa's essence had already become a part of her. She also described herself as being fiercely protective of the role, saying she fought harder for Furiosa than for any character she had ever played. While Miller had a very specific vision for the character, Taylor-Joy felt it was her responsibility to ensure audiences could occasionally see the anger and humanity beneath Furiosa's stoic exterior. Discussing one of the most memorable pieces of direction she received from Miller, Taylor-Joy explained that he wanted Furiosa to remain emotionally restrained. Her contribution, however, was to make sure there was always a glimpse of the character's humanity, believing that audiences connect more deeply when they can see what lies beneath a tough exterior. She also praised Miller's collaborative filmmaking style, describing it as similar to attending a university where every creative decision had to be thoroughly justified. According to Taylor-Joy, if an idea was going to make it into one of Miller's films, it had to withstand constant questioning and discussion. She said the experience became invaluable training, not only as an actor but also for her future ambition of becoming a director, teaching her the importance of unwavering conviction and creative decisions. Chris Hemsworth arrived on set while recovering from a back injury, but he was excited to take on the role of Dementi's because it allowed him to break away from being typecast as the muscular action hero. He embraced the opportunity to portray a far more complex and darker character. Hemsworth also shared his belief that suffering without purpose is painful, but suffering in pursuit of something meaningful can be both renewing and fulfilling. Tom Burke revealed that George Miller welcomed collaboration when developing the relationship between Praetorian Jack and Furiosa, while Miller initially envisioned a stronger romance. Burke believed the characters would naturally suppress those feelings until they finally believed they were escaping to safety. The actors also shared several ideas that were filmed or considered but ultimately removed from the final cut. Taylor-Joy revealed that Miller shot a scene in which Furiosa cuts out Dementes's tongue. Although the act is referenced in the theatrical version, the scene itself was ultimately deleted. Burke also disclosed that Miller rejected the idea of a training montage showing Jack teaching Furiosa the skills of road warfare, believing it relied too heavily on familiar action movie cliché. Copyright. Visual effects supervisor Andrew Jackson returned after his acclaimed work on Mad Max, Fury Road. His studio, NEG, collaborated with Framestore, Metaphys.I, Rising Sun Pictures, and Slate VFX to bring the film's ambitious visuals to life. Jackson had previously earned an Academy Award nomination for Fury Road before winning the Oscar for his work on Tenet, 2020. Jackson explained that Furiosa relies even more heavily on visual effects than Fury Road. George Miller fully embraced CGI as a tool for creating expansive worlds and refining complex sequences during post-production. Beyond traditional digital work such as enhancing environments and seamlessly combining footage from multiple stunt performers filmed separately for safety, visual effects played a major role in elevating several action scenes. For example, VFX was used extensively during the stowaway sequence to animate the Octobos's dramatic demise, while the film's climactic chase featured a CGI version of Furiosa's otherwise practical vehicle to perform dangerous maneuvers that would have been impossible or unsafe with a real car, including high-speed collisions with motorcycles. The visual effects team also enhanced the sense of speed by increasing the motion of background elements and animating airborne equipment, including the Octobos's distinctive rippling black parachute. As Furiosa ages from a child into a young woman, Miller and Jackson worked with Rising Sun Pictures to create a seamless transition between Alyla Browne and Anya Taylor-Joy using machine learning technology. Taylor-Joy explained that Miller wanted the transformation to be virtually invisible to audiences. She spent 2 full days with the visual effects team so they could accurately capture and map her facial expressions. According to Taylor-Joy, around 35% of Alyla Browne's face was digitally altered at the beginning of the transition to resemble her features. By Browne's final scenes in the Citadel, that figure had increased to roughly 80%. In addition, some of Taylor-Joy's early scenes in the Citadel included subtle digital adjustments to her eyes so they more closely matched Browne's appearance. Taylor-Joy emphasized that the Actors Union strike sought stronger regulations for eye technologies in filmmaking. She also clarified that the eye-assisted visual effects used for Furiosa were carried out with the full knowledge and consent of everyone involved. Metaphys.I played a similar role for the Bullet Farmer by digitally blending Lee Perry's facial features with those of the late Richard Carter, who originally portrayed the character in Mad Max, Fury Road. According to the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, ABC, Furiosa became the most expensive film ever produced in Australia, with a reported budget of odd $333.2 million. More than 3,000 people worked on the production, including former inmates who were hired as supporting performers. To take advantage of Australia's tax incentives for visual effects work, NEG opened a new studio in Sydney dedicated to Furiosa's VFX production. Once fully operational, the facility was expected to employ up to 500 visual effects artists. The film also received significant government support, including a filming incentive from the New South Wales government and several federal tax offsets. Director George Miller stated that this government assistance was essential in making it possible to shoot the film in Australia. Amanda Lotz, a professor at Queensland University of Technology, estimated that Screen NSW contributed approximately odd $1.5 million in direct funding. She also noted that the Australian federal government's 40% tax rebate for qualifying productions could have been worth around on $133 million, based on the film's reported production spending within Australia. Former New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian expressed hope that Furiosa would generate approximately $350 million for the Australian economy. In May 2024, an ABC report suggested that the New South Wales filming incentive was worth $175 million, more than half the film's reported budget. However, ABC later corrected the report and removed that estimate. Other sources clarified that the $175 million figure referred to the total value of the state's subsidy program over 5 years, not the amount awarded specifically to Furiosa. The film's visual effects team also made it possible to keep production in Australia despite New South Wales not providing the ideal desert conditions. In contrast, Mad Max Fury Road had to relocate filming from Australia to Namibia after heavy rainfall caused wildflowers to bloom across the Australian desert, an appearance that didn't fit the post-apocalyptic setting. According to Frames Tour, the opening chase sequence, in which Mary pursues Furiosa's kidnappers across vast sand dunes, required extensive digital work. The team ultimately had to replace nearly all of the ground in those shots. Colorist Eric Witt, who also worked on Fury Road, explained that many desert scenes required fully computer-generated backgrounds, because the filmmakers wanted the Australian landscapes to resemble Namibia, and filming took place under constantly changing sunny and cloudy conditions. A significant amount of digital enhancement was necessary. Composer Tom Holkenborg, better known as Junkie XL, returned to score Furiosa, marking his third collaboration with George Miller after Mad Max, Fury Road and 3,000 Years of Longing. Hulkenborg relocated to Sydney to compose the score and also assisted with the film's final audio mix. He explained that, unlike Fury Road, Furiosa is fundamentally a character-driven story, so the music needed to reflect the protagonist's personal journey. The entire score was written from Furiosa's perspective, capturing how she experiences the harsh world around her, the unforgiving wasteland, and its relentless cruelty. Hulkenborg also revealed that Miller wanted a far more restrained and emotional score than the explosive soundtrack of Fury Road, which he described as an intense rock opera driven by non-stop action over the course of 48 hours. Miller specifically rejected the idea of reusing the track Brothers in Arms from Fury Road, which played during Max and Furiosa's escape from Rockrider Canyon. Instead, Miller wanted the audience to focus on Furiosa's decision to sacrifice her best opportunity to find the green place in order to save Jack. He instructed Hulkenborg to use the musical themes associated with the green place rather than revisiting earlier action motifs. Miller described the Bullet Farm sequence as a love story unfolding in the middle of a massive action scene. Through their choices and sacrifices, he wanted to show that both Furiosa and Jack were willing to give everything they had for one another. Furthermore, Hulkenborg used AI to make deepfake voices from another voice, explaining, "What if the source sound was a drum rhythm music, and what if the destination sound was an electric guitar? But the software doesn't know what to make of it, so it gave us a happy accident that we used throughout the score." Warner Brothers' in-house record label Water Music released the official soundtrack album on May 17, 2024. On November 29, 2023, the Warner Brothers booth at CCXP featured a first-look image of Taylor-Joy's Furiosa. The following day, the teaser trailer of the film was released. On March 19, 2024, the official trailer debuted at Cinemakin. Warner Brothers screened extended footage of the film. On April 9, Miller, Taylor-Joy, and Hemsworth appeared together for the first time in public to promote the film, running about 5 minutes. The extended preview as shown at Cinemakin revealed that the film would be split into 3 distinct chapters. Her Odyssey begins, a warrior awakens and a ride into vengeance. The final film actually features a total of 5 chapters. The Polofin Accessibility, Lessons from the Wasteland, The Stowaway, Homeward, and Beyond Vengeance. A trio of first-look images from the film were released exclusively by Total Film on April 19. On May 16, an extended sneak peek was released by Odeon Cinemas and was released on YouTube the following day. Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga had its world premiere at the 77th Cannes Film Festival, a screening out of competition on May 15, 2024. The film was released theatrically in Australia and India on May 23, 2024 and in the United States on May 24, 2024. It was originally scheduled to be released on June 23, 2023. But was delayed to May 2024. The film opened in China on June 7, 2024, becoming the first Mad Max film to be theatrically released there. In May 2024, on the Happy, Sad, Confused podcast, Miller confirmed that the film would be receiving a black and white treatment similar to what he did for A Fury Road, referred to as the Black and Chrome edition. In 2016, expressing his interest in black and white as a format for film, the film was released on Voda and digital platforms on 24 June. Following its digital release, it was reported that Furiosa led the home viewing charts. The film came in at number 1 on the iTunes VOD chart for July 1 and held the same position in the Fandango at Home chart for the week of 24 to 30 June. It was released on 4K UHD, Blu-ray, and DVD on 13 August. Special features include the hour-long behind-the-scenes documentary Highway to Valhalla. Music: Pursuit of Furiosa, which interweaves concept art, set footage, and interviews with cast and crew, providing an overview of the project from conception to post-production, while shorter featurettes delve into Furiosa and Mendes and Taylor-Joy and Hemsworth's performances. An extended breakdown of the stowaway action sequence is also included. The disc is rounded out by a feature read on all the film's vehicular designs and theater construction. The same day, Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga Black and Chrome edition, was released simultaneously on 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray and digital streaming and is also featured in the Mad Max 5 Film 4K Collector's Edition. Music, which was released on September 24. The film became available for streaming on Max on August 16. On December 30, alongside Fury Road, the film became available to stream on Netflix. Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, grossed $67.6 million in the United States and Canada and $15.3 million in other territories for a worldwide total of $174.40 million. The film's box office performance had been deemed a failure. Critics and film pundits noted that the franchise's limited appeal in general and prequels in particular contributed to poor box office performance. Variety reported that industry insiders estimated that Furiosa needed to gross $350 to $375 million to turn a profit and that it would end up losing $75 to $95 million for the studio and its co-funders. However, a Warner Brothers spokesperson claimed that the film had a lower break-even point. As much as half of the film's budget was covered by the NSW and Australian federal governments. In April 2025, Deadline Hollywood calculated the film lost the studio $119.6 million when factoring together all expenses and revenues. In the United States, Furiosa's music $32.30 million in gross in its 4-day opening weekend was described as disappointing. Industry analysts had projected $40 million. Of that $32.3 million, the film earned $10.4 million on its first Friday, including an estimated $3.5 million from a Thursday night previews, the latter of which was similar to the $3.70 million made by Fury Road. Although Furiosa was the highest-grossing film during the Memorial Day weekend, beating the Garfield movie in sight $149,000 that weekend had the lowest total box office receipts since 1995, and Furiosa was the lowest-grossing film to finish in first over Memorial Drive since Casper, $22 million before inflation adjustment. Also released in 1995, Furiosa's $10.80 $8 million second weekend, a 59% drop from the opening weekend, excluding Memorial Day itself. It was also considered a disappointment. The Garfield movie dropped only 42% and won the weekend. For comparison, Fury Road had a 46% drop in its second weekend. As a whole, ticket sales for that weekend were down 65% from 2023. Domestic receipts fell an additional 61% in the third weekend when Furiosa was scheduled to surrender its premium large format screens, which are typically booked months in advance to the premiere weekend of Bad Boys Ride or Die. Furiosa's domestic box office relied heavily on PLF screens. Internationally, Furiosa grossed $33.3 million in the first 3 days. Industry analysts had a projected $40 to $45 million. A week prior, the film had opened at number 1 in Australia, earning $33 million. During its second weekend, Furiosa performed relatively better in international markets, grossing $21 million, which Lachy Hollywood called a good 38% drop. Coming off a low base, the film premiered in Japan on May 31, 2024, 1 week behind the United States, and became the first non-Japanese film of 2024 to debut at number 1. A165 reported by Variety. It also held the number 1 spot in China on the first day, June 7. Over the Calentries Dragon Boat Festival holiday weekend, but its $3.58 million taken its first 3-day weekend left it outside the top 5. However, The Hollywood Reporter reported that the film opened in 6th place with $3.7 million as a batch of local releases dominated ticket sales. Chinese ticketing app Moan forecasted the Furiosa to finish its run with about $7.5 million. Industry analysts identified a variety of reasons for Furiosa's opening weekend, which was considered weak in the light of what film consultant David A. Gross called outstanding reviews and a good audience score. The opening weekend was not entirely unexpected. In April 2024, Deadline Hollywood reported that some sources were expecting Furiosa to compete neck and neck with the Garfield movie 168. However, following Furiosa's disappointing second weekend, an anonymous studio executive told a reporter that it's mind-numbing that Furiosa hasn't grossed $50 million domestically. Gross, and The Hollywood Reporter's Pamela McClintock wrote that Furiosa was hurt by the industry-wide disruption to the film production schedule caused by the 2023 Hollywood labor disputes, a position that, according to the New York Times, the film studios had been pushing for several months. According to Gross, a movie-going thrives on momentum and rhythm, one strong movie after another. Bringing fans to the multiplex once or more per month. Right now, the schedule is thin. Despite being a female-fed action film, Furiosa's opening weekend viewership skewed heavily male, 72%, and young, 55% of viewers were between ages 18 to 34. The Rap's Jeremy Flooster speculated that one of the reasons for the awful underperformance was because the film is not a 4-quadrant tentpole. Writing, Furiosa wasn't ever expected to be a Fast and Furious or Disney remake-level moneymaker for theaters, skewing more towards male audiences and to longtime Mad Max fans. Forbes' Paul Tassi praised Hemsworth and Taylor-Joy's performances. Uta questioned whether Furiosa commanded the same kind of brand recognition as a traditional Apple tentpole feature, given that it was a prequel spin-off of a side character in Fury Road, who is not even being played by the same actress this time. After Bad Boys Ride or Die debuted above expectations, box office analyst Scott Mendelson tweeted that sequels soar, prequels stumble, and original struggle. Just like nearly every other summer, Furiosa's domestic grosses disproportionately came from premium large format screenings, PLFs, like IMAX and Dolby Cinema, which command higher ticket prices than the screenings in regular theaters, and according to Warner Bros. Executives may appeal more to die-hard fans. In the opening weekend, 54% of Furiosa's domestic gross came from PLFs compared to 48% for Oppenheimer, 44% for Music A Dune Part 2, 42% for Mission A Impossible, Dead Reckoning Part 1, and 37% for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Conversely, Music A Screen Landscape of suggested that a Hollywood studio's eagerness to push all content onto their own streaming services had encouraged everyday filmgoers to put off watching Furiosa in the theaters on the assumption that Warner Brothers would quickly transition a Furiosa to Max. She added that higher budgets for tentpole features were raising the bar for box office success. Several critics and filmmakers urged audiences to watch the film without being put off by its weak box office results. Vulture's Bill Jebrai, who praised Miller for taking a big franchise sequel and turning it into something strange, sublime, and potentially off-putting, urged analysts to focus on long-term performance and to give Furiosa time to grab a foothold in the marketplace rather than write off the film based on its opening weekend. Eber also pointed to the 2023 cultural phenomenon of Barbie and Oppenheimer, which accumulated 75% of its total grosses after the opening weekend due to strong word of mouth. Director Wes Ball, whose film Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes had moved up its release date to avoid directly competing with Furiosa, encouraged people to go and watch the film on the big screen on Twitter by tweeting, "Like the movie or not, creative swings like this don't come around often. When they do, try to enjoy the ambition of it all in a great theater." Furiosa was mad because Fury Road was beloved, not because it was a box office hit. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 90% of 419 critics' reviews are positive with an average rating of 7.9. The website's consensus reads, retroactively enriching Fury Road with a greater emotional heft, if not quite matching it in propulsive throttle. Furiosa is another glorious swerve in a mastermind George Miller's breathless race towards cinematic Valhalla. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 79 out of 100 based on 64 critics, indicating generally favorable reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of B+ on an A+ A to F scale, the same as Fury Road. Those polled by PostTrack gave the film an average of 4.5 stars out of 5. With 70% saying they would definitely recommend it. Writing for Robert.com, Robert Daniels awarded the film 4 out of 4 stars and called it one of the best prequels ever made. He praised the action sequences, performances, and a storyline. Pete Hammond of Deadline Hollywood viewed the film as possessing the best screenplay of any Mad Max film. The Guardian's Peter Bradshaw called it a Taylor-Joy and overwhelmingly convincing action heroine. Writing for Empire, John Annett awarded the film 5 out of 5 stars and described Taylor-Joy as phenomenal, finding the right balance of fast-dealiness and fractured humanity that it instilled. Jody Yuan from The Washington Post thought that Hemsworth had created one of the all-time greatest screen villains, and Jake Wilson of the Sydney Morning Herald saw him stealing the show. In a critical review, Owen Gleiberman of Variety perceived Furiosa as franchise overkill and as filled with pretension. Nicholas Barber of The Book also disliked some aspects of the film, giving it 3 out of 5 stars. He viewed the plot as meandering and also draining. Writing, you soon reach the point where you're sick of sand, sick of explosions, Sick of off-puttingly sadistic violence, Stephanie Saga Eric's review in Time similarly criticized the film as a slog that's working hard to persuade us we're having a good time. John MacDonald of the Australian Financial Review opined that a part of the film's failure may be attributed to the writing but also to Hemsworth's suddenness as an actor. In July 2024, Theron confirmed she had seen the film, stating, "It's amazing. It's a beautiful film." When asked if she had talked to Taylor-Joy at all throughout the process or since its release, Theron said, "No. We've really been trying to connect. It's been one of those. We can actually make a comedy out of it. We keep running into each other and in places when we don't have time to really talk to each other. So, we're constantly like, oh my god. Okay, let's skate together, and then life takes over. It'll happen when it's right." By year's end, Roker.com critic Matt Zoller cites along with Cortland Kelly named Furiosa as the best of the top 10 A films of 2024, having called it a triumph from Georgia Miller despite its imperfections and a film in the tradition of other late-career masterpieces by great directors, clearly less interested in recycling the same established templates yet again and revisiting familiar themes and situations that were once presented more straightforwardly with a more ambivalent or complicated attitude. Lucas Clubber's Dyke writer for Collider ranked it as the best action film of the year, writing Furiosa produces an author classic tale of vengeance. This movie is a worthy entry in the Mad Max franchise and continues to revolutionize action movies with impressive practical stunts. The oil tanker scene alone is one of the best sequences in an action movie. The non-stop narrative has exhilarating and heartbreaking moments that establish Furiosa as one of the greatest action movies ever, let alone the best of 2024. Many filmmakers including Maggie Betts, A. Davy Joe, Robert Edgars, Jeff Fowler, A. Drew Goddard, Luca Guadagnino, Donia Hertzfeld, David Lowery, Pascal Plante, A. Celine Song, Nacho Vigolando, and Adam Wingard cited the film as among their favorites of 2024. It's home to rock, a dust, ash, bone. The people who lie via their hearts, survivors of cataclysm, wear the tatters of their own humanity round their shoulders. What little hope theists stored away was long ago taken from them, ripped open like a carcass and picked up by buzzards. Perhaps once the land was green, perhaps you can listen to water run unhindered, pick red fruit right from the tree, but no more, no more. Such places are history, myth, delusion. Furiosa lived in such a place of green trees and cool streams, music, an Eden where hope still grows ripe and full, and people would do most anything to find it. Well, a handful of raiders did find it, and they found the Furiosa, too. They tied her up and threw her across a bike, hoping to use her as living proof of the hidden paradise. Furiosa's mother tore after the kidnappers and snatched her beloved daughter away out of the enemy camp. Soon, on the back of a pilfered motorcycle, music, they were roaring back home. The raiders, led by the warlord Dementor, tore after them, determined to reclaim their prize, and if possible, to send on Furiosa's green garden like gas-reeking locusts. Soon, Furiosa's mother was dead, and the girl herself was back in their hands. But before she died, Furiosa's mama placed a fruit seed in Furiosa's hands. "Plant this seed," she told the girl. "Protect the green place." She's been with a Dementus for years now, watching him peanut and plunder and kill. She's never spoken a word since her mother died. At first, he kept Furiosa in a cage, but Dementor has taken a shine to the girl, adopting her as his own and calling her my little D. Furiosa bides her time, waiting, looking for an opportunity to find her way back to the green place. Dementi's upcoming meeting with another rival warlord, the mysterious ruler of the Citadel, Immortnia. The wasteland is not filled with a lot of great role models. Virtue is pretty relative, and showing too much kindness is a good way to get you killed. Actually, Furiosa's mother is living, dying proof of Thea granting clemency to a fellow mother as she takes Furiosa out of Dementis camp. The other mom promptly rats the two out. Naturally, Furiosa's mom shows a mother's instincts, risking her life repeatedly for her little girl. Other folks living in that green place seem to have retained a little more humanity than their wasteland fellows, too, but even in the wasteland, not everyone's a jerk. As an adult, Furiosa falls in with a driver named Praetorian Jack. He mentors and befriends her, promising to give Furiosa the skills she needs to survive and ultimately to take off on her own. Furiosa grows to trust Jack, and the man proves to be worthy of it, never asking her too many questions, but always supporting her as much as he can. As for Furiosa, well, she's suffered aplenty in her short lifetime. The things she's seen and the things she's done leave an indelible mark, but as scarred as she might be, Furiosa shows an unwavering loyalty to those who prove worthy of it. She rushes in to fight for those she loves, even when the odds seem hopeless, and the more prudent path would be away from the fight. The various tribes that populate the wasteland have at times embraced an shamanistic attitude toward the natural and man-made elements around them. When the movie introduces us to Dementis, he's in his tent draped in a shawl almost as an old-school sadist he might be. His attention, as is that of the tent's other occupants, is turned toward a motorcycle. A history man, an ancient-looking fellow whose skin is covered in tattooed words, recites the specifications of said motorcycle, almost as if it was some sort of mantra. In another scene, several men seem to bow reverently to a pile of discarded steering wheels. Immortan Joe into quite the key divine figure he becomes in Mad Max Fury Road, but he still inspires rabid devotion from his followers, sending a man called a war boy to his death just to prove his loyalty. Those war boys incidentally spray their mouths in chrome paint when they go all kamikaze, which is often again music a nod to their holy or near holy regard in which they hold their machines. We also hear a reference to holy motors. The residents of Furiosa's green place turn away from man-made objects and instead cast with devotion they have upward. The stars be with you. Theists sometimes tell each other for good luck. A narrator recites some notable wars in Earth's past, broadly mentioning the countless wars of religion and righteous belief. Someone calls Furiosa the darkest of angels, the fifth rider of the apocalypse. We hear the phrase hell and hallelujah, as was the case in Mad Max Fury Road. Immortan Joe has essentially a harem. It's populated by women draped in white garments that sometimes expose thigh and midriff and who are there simply to have sex with the warlord. He's hoping to father another heir. When Dementis and Immortan Joe meet as part of some wasteland negotiations, Dementis brings along the child Furiosa, introducing her as being untouched by man or disease. Immortan Joe wants the girl to join the harem, believing that she'll be a fine breeder when she grows up. Dementis initially tells Immortan Joe that his daughter is not for sale, but thanks in part to Furiosa's own machinations, she falls under the sway of the Citadel anyway. And while Immortan Joe seems only to be holding Furiosa for future use, his son Rictus Erectus seems to be interested in the child right now. He plays with her hair in one scene and forces her into a private meeting in another. Furiosa escapes both encounters. Residents of the green place show deep love for one another, not by kissing, but by pressing their foreheads together. Furiosa and her mother engage in this gesture. Furiosa and Praetoriana Jack do as well, and Furiosa's mother performs the gesture with another woman. This could be just a sign of deep friendship, but it could also be interpreted as a nod to a same-sex romance. The headquarters of the Wasteland boss features a painting filled with bare-breasted women. He's reproducing what would appear to be a romantic era painting of which he has a small print of. The motorcycle is adorned with the head and torso of an anatomically accurate female mannequin. Men go without shirts. The mender often wears an elaborate codpiece. At one juncture, he also chains a teddy bear around his loin area which someone removes. Immortan Joe's other son is named Scrotus. A man is chained to several motorcycles which have then pulled the guy apart. Another has his neck severely cut in a crash. The man bleeds his life away as dogs lap up the blood and lick his wounds. Someone is executed by being tethered to the back of a bike via chain. He's forced to run until he can run no more, after which he's dragged in a circle for hours. He's quite dead by then. We see someone serve as living fertilizer for a tree planted apparently right on the guy's groin. The character is essentially a crucified. Wasteland inhabitants surround a man who crashed in the desert. If the fallen man isn't dead already, it's clear he soon will be. Another character gets gobbled up by the desert itself, being sucked into a pit. We do learn how Furiosa lost her arm, and we see the appendage dangling from a chain gore dripping from the lost limb. After losing it, she ultimately finds herself in a nightmarish cavern. Her wound is covered in magnets, Larry also having a field day with the other arms, legs, and dead bodies crammed into the space. Live residents encourage Furiosa to stay, telling the woman that she can find peace there. A man is skewered in the head with a massive via dart. A war boy sports a small arrow in his shaved head, and he appears not to mind. A dog trots around with a disembodied foot in its mouth. A Tyree shreds some booty's arm. A descending portal smashes a car and presumably those inside. Claws and chains snatch up motorcycles and their riders. Music sending many of the latter falling to their doom. A horse is butchered and its head is strapped to a motorcycle. Someone purposely leaps to his death, taking an explosive with him and blowing up several not-so-innocent watchers. Someone suffers a nasty-looking wound in the back. A male character's nipples area ripped off. Another character has a chain connected to his chest area. Dozens of people are killed via guns. We often see the moment of impact and slash or the resulting head wounds. Many others die in fiery explosions. Still others get crushed by cars, trucks, and war machines. Paragliders and ultralight flyers are harpooned and dragged into the ground or into spinning bits of machinery. Spines are somehow used as whips. A prominent character walks around with a vacant eye socket. So many vehicles crash. So many people die in the vehicles. The word "b" is used twice, and we hear the British profanity "bollocks" once along with the anatomical word testes. The word "PSS" is used several times, always referring to the actual substance. We hear a crude term for breasts as well. God's name is abused once. A fighter holds a jar of his own urine, which he apparently uses to cool down a war machine's radiators. He even apparently has the title of the boy. Furiosa shakes a bottle of her own urine in someone's face. An organic mechanic whips up delicacies made from human blood and possibly flesh. You can never balance the scales of suffering, a dementor tells Furiosa. No matter. She's sure going to try. Listen. All Mad Max movies are plenty bleak. In each installment, creator and director George Miller reliably spoons us a broth of dust and blood. And he shows us a world gone well, mad. That's really the point. Some humans may have survived the apocalypse, but humanity is mostly dead. In most Mad Max films, bloody and carnage-driven as they are, we see signs of virtue and hope and love. Mad Max, Fury Road, for all successes. Music came with some interesting spiritual wrinkles and a quest for redemption. Does that necessarily redeem all the blood and gore that splashes on the way? Maybe not, but at least we feel like the movie had a purpose beyond the okay. I'd like Furiosa's drive toward home in Fury Road was taking us to a better place, but in the prequel Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, we're literally and figuratively driving away from the comparative paradise and into the wasteland, and the waste we encounter can feel pretty oppressive. Listen. For Mad Max fans, all the ingredients are here. The action sequences are still great, if not as spectacular. The world of Mad Max has never felt so convincingly grimy. Chris Hemsworth, playing Dementus, swaggers around as something like a post-apocalyptic Jack Sparrow, managing to be both a bit ludicrous and reliably evil. But without a redemptive carrot to chase and tease a movie, the story can feel sluggish. and the violence sinks into inescapably sadism, and when Dementis tells Furiosa that the two of them are cut from the same cloth, who by it, she is, as her world made her, cruel. The question is, do you have what it takes to make Ida epic, says an undaunted Chris Hemsworth. It's a call to action that comes toward at the end of Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, a George Miller's apocalyptic epic western, a prequel to Mad Max, Fury Road, that it could, of course, be directed at Miller himself, because this film is here to give you a more gravity-defying chases, more high-flying stunts, more deeply felt epios, and somehow an even greater spirit to push the limits of what the frame can hold. Employing Christian iconography and Arthurian legend to craft an entrancing story that still manages to surprise. Music. Even if we already know of the bleak future it's guiding USA toward, it's simply one of the best prequels ever made, broken into 5 chapters, each denser than the last. The film begins with a very young Furiosa, Alyla Browne, picking fruit from a tree near her bucolic homeland, the Green Place. A biker gang arrives to forage the land, and though Furiosa ably attempts to sabotage their bikes, she is captured, causing her mother, Charlie Fraser, to venture out into the desert wasteland to retrieve her. A crazy chase ensues, one of the film's many expansive set pieces that sees Furiosa's mother pursuing her daughter's kidnappers over sand dunes and through a sandstorm to the steps of a hideout belonging to the messianic figure Dementis. Chris Hemsworth. This is the beginning of a decade-long feud between Furiosa and Dementis that involves revenge, grief, and the desire to return home. To do any further summarizing would of course not only spoil the film, but would also say it added the narrative beats are necessary. They're not. That doesn't mean Furiosa is illogical. Rather, that more than anything, Miller is telling an emotional story of how a once virtuous child became a hardened woman. That kind of arc matches well with the film's operatic sensibilities as we're reintroduced to the origins of wasteland fortresses like Gastown and Bullet Farm and taken to the Citadel helmed by a younger more imposing Immortan Joe Lachy Hulme. Other characters like Immortan Joe's bumbling sons Vertus, A. Nathan Jones, and Scrotus, Josh Hellman, a return, and tips of the hat are given to fan favorites from Fury Road. Surprisingly, the older Furiosa, striking Anya Taylor-Joy, doesn't appear until an hour or so in the film. That might inspire immediate disappointment in some, but it shouldn't because Alyla Browne as the adolescent Furiosa is so absorbing, often recalling young Jodie Foster in her mixture of otherworldly intelligence and relentless confidence. The groundwork she lays is so seamless that by the time we leap forward to Taylor-Joy's take on the character, Ida required a few beats before I could tell the difference between the two actresses. Miller is so assured at reading an audience. He even crafts an elongated chase that sees Furiosa driving across the wasteland with Praetorian Jack Burke on an oil run that gives Taylor-Joy and the character the perfect entrance, a hard push and for a worthy close-up. Though Burke is on screen for a relatively short time, he and Taylor-Joy build quick chemistry as two lost souls who believe that paradise still exists somewhere in the world if they follow the map of stars tattooed on Furiosa's forearm. If it feels like Hemsworth is an all-Saran, he isn't, which is odd to say because he is saddled with a terrible wig and an obtrusive prosthetic nose and even disappears for longer stretches. Still, whenever he does show up, he might be the best part of Furiosa. He doesn't just get the best, more instantly quotable lines. He has never been more physically commanding. First as a poised messiah and swindler, then as a blowhard politician, then as an emperor with no clothes on. The combination of tremendous wit, a callousness, and cold calculations is a persona Hemsworth has worked on for some time, and it all comes together here for an unforgettable villain turn. I can certainly nitpick about what elements preferring Fury Road as opposed to Furiosa. There's far more VFX in the latter, causing me to miss some of the thrill Miller inspired with his unflinching use of practical effect. I also think that A Fury Road acts on a subtler thematic level, which is saying something because the visual language in that film, for as immaculate as the craftsmanship, basically bashes you over the head. Furiosa goes one step further. Every line of dialogue flags the metaphorical importance of every scene. And yet, music. It's easy to ignore these tiny grievances. Not only because you're left marveling at the big swing Miller is taking, but also because his interest in this world, these characters, music and this type of big, bold storytelling is so infectious. There's also a character named Piss Boy. So this really is a movie with something for everyone. No one knows how to do scale better than Miller. Margaret Sixla and Elliot Nachman's editing is breathtakingly seamless, quickly building both art between characters and gnarly deaths with equal tenacity to the point that D.P. Simon Eugen's eloquent photography of these desolate death valleys, matched by composer Tomer Holkenborg deafeningly propulsive score, wholly immerses you in a way that into needlessly showing. Each large set piece feels necessary, aware of space and a story, and brooming with a camera that takes delight in knowing exactly what a kill shot or angle of the many battles we want to take in as it swoops between lunging bodies, massive infernos, monster trucks, big rigs, and over sanded dunes. Much will be written about A Furiosa on a thematic level, such as how it subverts the biblical apple scene for a well-earned ending, or how it speaks of our present environmental, militaristic, and regressive political reality, particularly why we go to war and the fecklessness of the leaders won't take us there. But this is also just a big entertaining popcorn movie told with a sense of adventure and play. Miller isn't here for tawdry melodrama, algorithmic plotting, or art design either for the small screen. Furiosa aims to blow you away, and it does, to Valhalla and beyond. Normally I would be a little hesitant about a prequel to something also singularly epic as Mad Max, Fury Road, especially a prequel that doesn't even include Mad Max, but they had me the moment it was announced that Mad Max creator and mastermind George Miller was returning as co-producer and director. And getting more backstory of a character as dynamic as Imperator or Furiosa made it even more enticing. In reality, Miller had a prequel centered around Furiosa in mind as far back as 2010. Following the success of 2015's spectacular Fury Road, he received the green light to make his movie, and it's a good one, perhaps not as mind-blowing as its predecessor, but nearly everything fans of the franchise will be looking for. At the same time, some might be surprised by certain choices Miller makes. Some of them work really well. Others I'm still not sure about. Interestingly, Furiosa features a lot more world building than you might expect. Miller and his returning co-writer Nicole Lathis put a lot of effort into adding texture to their wasteland. They spend a healthy amount of time setting up key players and developing the tensions between them, which our heroine must eventually navigate. As a result, Furiosa isn't as propulsive as A Fury Road, and the action doesn't really drive the movie as it has in past Mad Max films. Yet, there is a depth of fast storytelling that may catch you by surprise. Of course, we do get the exhilarating vehicular mayhem and visceral road combat that the franchise is best known for, but with the exception of one extraordinary sprawling sequence midway through, much of the action is somewhat smaller in scale and it takes on slightly different forms. These is seen clearest in the ending, which is anything but the sweeping fuel-injected set piece we're accustomed to. It's a finish that I'm still wrestling with. Furiosa's post-apocalyptic odyssey plays out over the course of 5 chapters. It begins with a young and fiery Furiosa, played by Alyla Browne, living happily with her mother, Charlie Fraser, in the Green Place, a lush and fruitful Eden-like homeland surrounded by harsh and barren desert. Her life is forever changed after she is abducted by raiders from the biker horde and taken to their leader, a ruthless, power-hungry warlord named Dementus, an endlessly charismatic Chris Hemsworth. After her mother's rescue attempt ends badly, Furiosa is enslaved by Dementus and paraded around in a cage as his prized possession, with the Furiosa refusing to give up the location of her homeland. Dementus sets his sights on another resource target, an outpost called the Citadel, which is ran by the oppressive cult leader, Immortan Joe, Lachy Hulme. After Dementus fails to stir up an insurrection among Joe's fanatical ranks, he infiltrates and takes over a vital fuel depot called Gastown. He then uses his control over the gas flow to force a meeting with Joe. The two enemies strike a deal which includes Joey getting Furiosa and grooming her to be one of his future wives. After several years, Furiosa, now played by a quiet yet fierce Anya Taylor-Joy, has shaved her head and poses as a boy working in Joe's garage. That leads to her meeting a pretty and Jack Tom Burke, a highly skilled driver of Joe's gas-hauling war rig, who takes her under his wing and teaches her the art of road warfare. They soon find themselves caught in the middle of a full-fledged war between the feral armies of Dementus and Joe. Miller fills his world with a wild assortment of characters sporting such gonzo names as the People Eater, Rictus Erectus, a Totem, an organic mechanic. Many are new, while some will immediately be recognized by the Fury Road faithful. What matters most is that they all feed in Miller's world as seamlessly as sand, rust, and blood. A host of superb supporting performances help bring the chaos to life. But it's Taylor-Joy and Hemsworth why shine brightest. Taylor-Joy isn't given much dialogue, and she doesn't need it to convey the pent-up rage and determination that drives her character. Then there's Hemsworth, who fuses comical with sinister in one of my favorite performances from the 40-year-old Australian. Furiosa is a stylish, immersive, and unabashedly cinematic experience that represents the manic vision of Georgia Miller in all its delightfully demented glory. Mad Max steers will relish the Piddles sun-baked hellscapes, the insane vehicular concoctions, the grimy and brutish societies, and the anything-goes wasteland violence, and they'll be surprised by the hefty attention to character development and world building. Furiosa has a little bit of everything. 1 minute you'll be chuckling at Hemsworth snapping the reins of his motorcycle chariot, and the next you'll be wincing at man burning alive or a severed arm dangling on a chain. What can I say? Welcome to the wasteland. Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga is in theaters now. From the demented yet chaotically brilliant mind of George Miller, can we all take a second to comprehend that this is also the same director behind a sweet film franchise Happy Feet comes the 9-year-in-the-making prequel that Mad Max cult fans have been madly anticipating for the summer of 2024. And while I'm definitely not the one for dystopian post-apocalyptic violencia films, I finally sat down and watched the originals and the latest Fury Road film to get a better picture of why we needed a prequel sequel. A franchise ahead of its time. I'll admit that the sandbox of toxic action-packed violencia has its moments, but it wasn't until I sat down for Charlize Theron's performance that I understood. Furiosa's revenge story isn't finished. She deserves another film. But does this Mad Max prequel handle like Mad Max Fury Road, or are fans revving up their engines for a huge Valhalla letdown? This Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga movie review safe for kids. I'm breaking down the visuals, the story, a full raw rating explanation for violence, adult themes and language, and what kids age recommendation is suggested to watch this new 2024 Furiosa. A Mad Max Saga movie parent's guide to the new Mad Max 2024 summer flick, a no-spoiler parental review of Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga 2024. Can Anya Taylor-Joy performance rival that of Charlize Theron and Prater Furiosa? Visually Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga definitely fits within the Wasteland universe, leading into the deserted scenes. The landscapes are beautiful, the costuming is on point, and the details are believably dark and twisted. The camera movements and special effects are heavily focused on the sci-fi and CGI thematic elements to enhance the action sequences and car chase scenes. Photosensitivity warning for viewers prone to epilepsy and photosensitivity. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga has no scenes of bright flashing or strobing lights. A fan note. There are no scenes with dizzying and fast-spinning camera movements that could be nausea-inducing, but there are multiple scenes with fast car chases. Directed and written by Mad Max creator George Miller. Happy Feet. Warner Brothers Pictures Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga 2024 movie, is officially the fifth installment into the Mad Max universe and the prequel to 2015 Mad Max Fury Road starring Anya Taylor-Joy, the Queen's Gambit as Imperator Furiosa, Chris Hemsworth, Thor, Love and Thunder as Dementus, Tom Burke, BBC's The Musketeers as Breedy and Jack, and Alyla Browne, Sting as young Furiosa. The story follows young Imperator Furiosa, who is snatched from the green place of many mothers and falls into the hands of a great biker horde led by the warlord Dementus. Sweeping through the wasteland, they come across the citadel presided over by the immortal Joe Willie. The two tyrants war for dominance. Furiosa finds herself in a non-stop battle to get home. Mad Max Fury Road fans will appreciate the insight into Furiosa's backstory, but plot filling requires a little more dialogue and less of what Mad Max movies do best: race across the wasteland with explosively violent results. But that's not to say that Miller has totally lost his mad touch. He's actually given chapters to this Mad Max prequel sequel, each with its own title and direction. And he's expanded the universe to explain and give the audience more insight into building of this world. The war over territory and resources gets a little old and predictable, but the real question is Furiosa a Mad Max saga for kids? Another Mad Max film that is rated R? Should parents be concerned? It's no secret that I am highly skeptical of Hulme ratings. Hello, Star Wars. The Rise of Skywalker, not disclosing any language, and as we know, not all movie and TV age ratings are the same. As a parent, it's been rather heartbreaking to witness how ratings have shifted over the years, with a G rating no longer an option to help guide parents. PG ratings now oscillating between turning red intensity to Christopher Robin comment of a PG-13/TV-14 age ratings teetering on the edge of raw or mar ratings. Night and Werewolf by Night. ICU. There's a wide range between the age of 0 to 14 years old for parents to consider. Having a fully disclosed parent guidelines can help determine if a movie or show is kid-friendly and safe for the whole family to watch together. Why is Furiosa, a Mad Max saga rated R? In Thesa Furiosa, a Mad Max saga movie review all safe for kids. This 2024 Furiosa, a Mad Max saga prequel is rated R for sequences of strong violence and grisly images. With film and TV ratings also unpredictable these days, having fully disclosed parent guidelines can help determine if a movie or television show like Furiosa, a Mad Max saga movie, is kid-friendly. Is Furiosa, a Mad Max saga movie too violent for kids? Is Furiosa, a Mad Max saga movie okay for kids? Let's break down that our age rating in this Furiosa, a Mad Max saga parental guide. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, is notoriously known for the intense, gory, music, and brutally in-your-face violence. Expect lots of fist fighting and hand-to-hand combat, child violence, blunt force trauma to the face and head, kill shots, deaths, and inferred deaths, including animals and humans, kidnapping, imprisonment, music, hangings, bound characters, torture, intent to harm does not actually occur, and use of a variety of weapons including guns, knives, explosives, spears, arrows, slingshots, and flamethrowers. Blood and gore are extensive throughout this Mad Max prequel, including gunshot wounds, including sniper shots to the head, facial cuts, scrapes, bloody noses, blood pools and spurts, open wounds, and fresh stitches, mutilated body parts, human and animal, dead bodies, human deformities and disabilities. Grotesque scarring and healed wounds are also common. A step above Fury Road with addition of fat decomposing body parts in various stages with the presence of active maggots, bugs, possibly disturbing scenes of dogs and birds with human bodies that may be uncomfortable to watch. And if the violence wasn't intense enough already, let's throw in a couple of possible jump scares and suspenseful action sequences as well. There is no alcoholic consumption, drugs, or smoking in Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. Familiar characters from Fury Road area back with the presence of medical equipment including blood transfusion tubing and various oxygen masks, tanks. One seizure is also shown on camera. Also stated above, there are highlighted characters with various deformities and disabilities that may be scary, creepy to children who have not followed the Mad Max universe before. He is seen in bottles and being poured out with verbal references to piss. Does Furiosa, the Mad Max saga, have sexual innuendo? In short, oh yes. While there are no nudity or sex scenes, there are multiple scenes of a man fondling his own nipples, which area visible to the audience and pierced. Also, a character from Fury Road, another male character's nipples area seen injured and visibly bleeding during another scene. There are multiple scenes of paintings that show women with exposed breasts and nipples. There are multiple scenes of scantily clad women, aka the wives. Discussion about the multiple wives also occurs. One woman is awoken from sleep with intent to RP, but it does not occur. A metal chastity belt is seen being cut off a woman. A woman's bare shoulder is exposed during a sewing of stitches. Hugging and holding of hands also occur between characters. There is one scene of a pregnant lady giving birth. Though most is shown off camera, the child is born with a deformity that may be difficult for kids to take in and understand. The umbilical cord is cut on camera. Furiosa's sexual innuendo verbal references include diabolics, testes, tits, nuts, and the character names of scrotum and rectus erectus. Mad Max Fury Road is a masterpiece of a film. I don't think saying that is too far of a stretch. Mind you, out of all of the action films that were released in the 2010s, Mad Max Fury Road was inventive, visceral, music, nuanced, and had an energy to it that no other film of its time or since has replicated. It's so good that I knew going into a Furiosa that no matter how much I liked the film, music, it wasn't going to be better than Fury Road. It just couldn't. For the entirety of this year, I was looking forward to Furiosa. After watching crap movie after crap movie after crap movie, Furiosa was my ally at the end of the tunnel. It reunites almost the entire Fury Road team, and even if the trailer had me slightly worried with its mediocre use of CG, I had faith in George Miller. Was my faith misplaced? Number. But there's one thing that is imperative you understand before you go into Furiosa. It is not Fury Road. Furiosa is a prequel that shows how Imperator Furiosa became the woman she is. As a child played by Alyla Browne, we witness how Furiosa was taken from the Green Place and became a prisoner of the leader of the biker horde, Dementus, Chris Hemsworth. While on the road seeking a place of bountiful resources, Dementus and the biker horde reach the Citadel, the home of Immortan Joe, Lachy Hulme, and to declare war against him. Eventually, Furiosa becomes an adult woman, played by Anna Taylor-Joy, and we witness the extremes of the war. All the while, Furiosa contemplates how she's going to escape from the wasteland and return home to the Green Place. Compared to a Fury Road, Furiosa is a much denser movie from a narrative perspective. The events of the film take place over 15 years, arguably longer if you want to consider the ending sequence, and we see a lot of the politics of the wasteland to present itself, while Fury Road excelled at teaching the audience about its world through the characters' actions. Furiosa tells its story more traditionally. There aren't as many pieces of ambiguous dialogue as there were in Fury Road, such as where the brides of Immortan Joe ask who killed the world, but instead, A. It's dialogue that's blunder and to the point. Characters have in-depth conversations and negotiations. We learn of the specific functions of places that were only mentioned in the previous film, like Gas Town and the Bullet Farm, and it feels that the film is making an honest-to-God effort at becoming easier to follow. I'm of two minds about this. I love how much we learn about the societies that have developed in the wasteland. Before, when we are following Max, A. music, we were only visitors in the part of the world, and we were attempting to make sense of the Citadel and its purposes alongside Max. We were outsiders looking in, but Furiosa isn't an outsider here. She has lived in the Citadel for years. She has been with the biker horde for quite some time too. So it's easier for us to learn about the dynamics of each organization and becoming more invested in how the world develops simply through watching the events unfold alongside her. On the other hand, it does make Furiosa a much slower movie. The action is sparse almost by design, feeling at times like the earlier Mad Max films, when Furiosa is a child. We don't see a lot of action or a spectacle that you would associate with the series post-Fury Road. There's a biker chase here, a torture scene there, and a war boy being a war boy. The action is reserved for when Furiosa is an adult, and I'm not going to lie that it took a little bit of time to realize and adjust to that testosterone is there, but it's related to the second half of the movie, and even then, music. You're not going to be as floored as you were when watching Fury Road. That's notable because these action scenes are been there, done that. But rather they're noted the main focus. Where the movie does excel though is in its emotional core. Understandably, Furiosa is the main character of this movie, and we really delve into her mind. We see the goal given to her very early in the film that she needs to return to the green place, and we see her grow up and become a layered and nuanced character. Granted, most of this is through Alyla Joy's acting once Furiosa becomes an adult, but the looks she gives, the decisions she makes, and the ways she interacts with people, whether it be Morton Joe, her partner Tori and Jack, Tom Burke, or Dementis himself, elevate her into one of the best characters of the past several years. Hand down, Furiosa describes itself as an odyssey mirrored by the 5-act structure represented in the film. Its length is much longer than the original Fury Road and one that feels deliberate again. Pieces are established and eventually brought up again. Shockingly enough, I think that Fury Road handled a lot of its narrative moments better. There's just a level of artistry in Fury Road that doesn't come across here. Subtle little moments and the planning that made Fury Road such a compelling watch aren't apparent here, making Furiosa blunder and more straightforward. As shocking as it is to say, Fury Road has more to say about the nature of the world than Furiosa does. That isn't to say nothing is going on under the hood in Furiosa, since it is a story about vengeance and innocence lost at its core. We see Furiosa ripped from a peaceful home and turned into a violent and destructive force, one that Dementis draws direct comparison to. There's also an attempt at using the story as a metaphor for loss in general. But it's not a cut-and-dry comparison. I do however see Furiosa as a great war allegory given how Dementis and the biker horde fight against the Citadel and their allies for almost the entire movie solely for the control of their resources, nearly plunging the entire wasteland into chaos. But no matter how much I talk about Furiosa's themes, they're just not as compelling as the ones that Fury Road so effortlessly conveyed through its excellent script and cinematography. Speaking of, I should probably mention the technical aspects of the film, and it should come as no surprise that George Miller can shoot a great action movie. The scenes of violence towards the end are immaculately shot and show that no one can make an action movie like George Miller. It was pretty clear at moments where there were some bad shot compositions and an over-reliance on green screens at points, but those are few and far between, much like Fury Road, Most of the scenes are shot with the practical effects and give this film a sense of believability and tangibility. I was surprised early into the film at how little the score was present. The droning bass and bombastic drums that a defined Fury Road didn't factor in for most of the film, even when we started to get into the more action-heavy set pieces. It did create this effect that the action beats and the scenes we were watching weren't over-the-top dramatic affairs, but had the inverse effect of making these moments more serious and intense. Don't worry. The beats do come and they are glorio, and that was my takeaway after watching Furiosa. It's a strangely more compelling film than Mad Max Fury Road. It's a movie that commanded my attention even during the film's numerous quiet moments. Despite taking some time to adjust my expectations, I was fully enamored with each little moment that presented itself in Furiosa that shaped her into the woman she would become. It trades in the bombast and masculinity for a quieter exploration of how a little girl becomes a woman and how she never forgets her heritage. I think I'll need to watch Furiosa a few more times before I can definitively say whether it's better than Fury Road, but the fact that I'm even open to that possibility shows that there's something special about Furiosa and that I can't quite put my finger on yet. Yes, I made a lot of direct comparisons between the two films, probably to an unfair degree. But when you advertise yourself as a prequel to an Academy Award-winning action spectacle that was one of the most talked about movies of 2015, I'm going to make those comparisons. Even when standing alongside the predecessor, Furiosa stands out for its commitment to telling the story it wants to tell and not just being a slapdash sequel to Fury Road that's merely a greatest hits rendition of what that movie did so well. It takes risks, numerous risks, and most of them pay off. Furiosa is an epic in every definition of the word, and will keep you glued to the screen at all times. It may not be a perfect movie, but it's a damn well one of the best movies that has come out this year so far. George Miller's Furiosa, the Mad Max saga, is a unique blend of heart-pounding action and a mesmerizing world-building. The film's masterful balance is evident in the action-packed set pieces, such as the thrilling desert chase and the constant adrenaline-fueled battle at top, alongside, and even under moving vehicles. These sequences will leave you on the edge of your seat, heart-racing and breathless, contrasting with the equally compelling character exposition and quieter moments, though not many, of solitude. It captivated my audience and made the runtime fly by as fast as the motorcycles traversing in the desert. Following the cinematic triumph of Mad Max Fury Road, Furiosa maintains the franchise's storytelling prowess, offers a fresh perspective, and unfolds a new timeline. It delves into the backstory of Furiosa, the character introduced in Fury Road, and explores her journey before the previous film's events. The continuation and evolution of the Mad Max narrative is a satisfying reassurance for moviegoers, promising a journey to intrigue and satisfy them. George Miller's directorial prowess remains as sharp as ever. He has the stamina and keen eye to orchestrate the dazzlingly constructed and flawlessly designed action sequences. Age is not stopping him. Cinematographer Simon Nugent's striking visuals see viewers in the apocalyptic world, a testament to his talent that has now firmly caught my attention. I needed to familiarize myself with his filmography and eagerly anticipated his future work. The top-notch sound design was impressive, providing an immersive feeling. This is a must-see on any IMAX or any PFL screen. Anya Taylor-Joy and Alyla Browne deliver performances that are not just terrific but intense, commanding. Music, deeply nuanced, and emotionally resonant. Their portrayals of the lead characters are remarkable, leaving a lasting impression on me and engaging my audience. Even Chris Hemsworth expands his range with his performance here. I almost didn't recognize him at first. I avoided all the trailers going in. Their performances left me amazed, and I thought about them long after Furiosa ended, which says something because there is a lot of fast spectacle to process. I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating and it gets everywhere. but it's almost the entire backdrop of a Furiosa, a Mad Max saga amongst a few while beautiful set pieces. It's a landscape you see in a lot of films. Just as you see a lot of revenge films, which a Furiosa also is, but George Miller's flamboyant vision of a unique world is anything but conventional. Even with all of the sand, a Furiosa is filled with colorful characters, bursts of imaginative design, and some of the most heated action sequences since Fury Road. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, is the origin story of the titular character Furiosa and how she became the fierce woman we met in Mad Max Fury Road. I won't get into details about the story itself because the trailers were cut to prevent us spoiling most of the film's plot, which I strive to do in my reviews as well. If you have not seen the other Mad Max films, you can still see Furiosa without having to watch the others. It can function as a perfect standalone film while still including pieces from the other installments of the franchise. Mad Max Fury Road wasn't a very dialogue-heavy film and Furiosa flows in that same vein. Anya Taylor-Joy plays the younger Furiosa who was played by Charlize Theron in Fury Road. With around only 30 lines of dialogue, Taylor-Joy brings an emotionally raw performance of someone who fighting for their survival while trying to maintain who they are. Taylor-Joy's emotive and striking facial features bring Furiosa's emotions out in an almost animalistic way. She has a certain snarl to the way she interacts with other people after her childhood was ripped away from her. You can see it in the curl of her lip when she interacts with the world around her. While the tinier nuisances of her performance still tread over my mind, her physical performance is nothing to discount either. With such limited dialogue as an actor, she sells so much and more of who Furiosa is as she grows with how she moves, walks, and uses weapons with more confidence as she progresses through her journey. While Anya Taylor-Joy plays Furiosa for around half of the film, Alyla Browne plays her for the earlier half of the story in her youth. She gives a fantastic performance alongside Chris Hemsworth as Drive Dementis. Without getting too deep into spoilers, she is treated almost like an animal for a good portion, and we see the struggle she goes through after the horrors she has been put through. It's a great performance from a young actor. After seeing the film Spiderhead, he prayed to the film gods that every director would cast Chris Hemsworth in villain roles because he is incredibly in them. As a physical specimen, he is already larger than life in stature and form, but he can give such an animated and bombastic performance that makes him an incredible villain. And when I tell you that he brings you to the Thunderdome with his role as Drive Dementis, I truly mean that. The costuming by Jenny Band has such a unique flair that he runs with. He prances around in a cape and a leather chest piece for a large portion of the film. There is a classic villain flair to him that makes you believe he very well could be the type to tie you to the train tracks. But then he flips the switch. Hemsworth brings a performance of a much darker nature that I wasn't ready for. Knowing his previous work underneath the characters Machismo and Cheese, there is a very sinister, horrible man that is portrayed wonderfully. There are scenes where you see that fun veneer wash away to reveal the real monster behind the color-soaked exterior. The scene's climatic final confrontation had me reminiscing about Arutahua's speech in Blade Runner. I was truly in awe of the performance and I hope we see more like this from Hemsworth. The primary colors of Furiosa are orange and yellow because of the apocalypse theming and the sand, with some films that would make it a bore to watch. With George Miller's vision of the world. It's just a tapestry to paint and an incredibly vibrant painting on. Where some post-apocalyptic worlds go for a more cold realistic design approach, Miller and his team go the opposite direction. Everything in the world of Mad Max is weird, and Furiosa is no exception. For instance, we all know how important vehicles are to the series. They are cultural and religious staples in the world. So, just giving your villain the story a car or a motorcycle at this point would feel like toning it down. What this film does instead is give Drive Dementis a chariot driven by motorcycles. That is only one of many incredibly vehicles that shop up in this movie. some of which fly. They are all distinctly painted and designed to feed the world and groups around them. Everything is incredibly unique, but not only that, everything feels customized. Every character's vehicle feels like it is an extension of their self. But it's an incredibly hard thing to do when there are so many things and people on screen at once. While there are so many vehicles driving around on screen at once, they are also typically in combat with one another, which leads to so many incredible stunt work. The film isn't as action heavy as its predecessor, which I think gives those scenes more room to breathe instead of it being back to back from start to finish. There was never a time in the film or during any of the sequences where the thought I've seen that before passed through my mind. Every different thing just felt brand new or a remix of ideas to form something fresh. But with all of that combat, there is a ton of explosions and something that I think is very important in the film: fire. With the world being so muted in colors, when fire is on screen, it really stands out. One group called the War Boys, who are always painted white, use fire in almost everything they do, from their explosive spears or flamethrowers. It's a constant in the film that really just stands out to me because thematically we are watching Furiosa being forged into the warrior that we met her as. There's a brilliant scene where Alyla Joy's back is pressed to a gate as flames nearly fully engulf her as she tries to stage a rescue, which she has failed to do in the past. Everything about the shot, from the costume design to Anna's face looking into the camera and everything around felt like the perfect encapsulation of the film for me. It's a world on fire, but we are seeing these small glimpses of the humanity that fights against the flames to exist. Despite everything thrown at her, Furiosa follows through on her promises until the very end. Well, this was always going to be an interesting film for me. The last entry in the Mad Max saga, as we are now calling it, Fury Road, blasted onto the world and had a profound effect on me. It is one of those rare films that I have watched over and over again, and each time I found a new detail I had missed before. It is in my top 10 films of all time list for a reason. This means that there was some trepidation when I walked into the theater wondering how a prequel to that film could stand up. But the second my seat reverberated with a motorcycle roar, I knew that I was in for something exciting. So to set the scene, a young Furiosa, Alyla Browne, is living in the green land of many mothers when she comes across the three bikers who have discovered their hidden sanctuary. Being captured, her mother, Charlie Fraser, chases Furiosa across the desert till they make it to the roving camp of right wherein Jack Chris Hemsworth. He says her value as the one person who knows where the place of abundance is and brings her into his collection. Which is where she first meets the leader of the Citadel, Immortan Joe, Lachy Hulme. The first surprise that I found with the Furiosa was its structure. I was expecting a very standard opening, a prologue followed by our story hitting into full gear. However, what we get is a series of vignettes that hit key points of Furiosa's Anna Taylor-Joy life as she grew up and became the imperator that we know from the previous movie. It is because of this that I want to take a moment to congratulate Alyla Browne for nailing that role for young Furiosa. So much of the film is built on that opening sequence, and you need to believe that she would eat the tubing of a motorbike while it is in full flight for the rest of the film to work. And indeed that opening captures you because it prepares you for the intensity that is going to happen throughout the film. There is a lot more ebb and flow to the pacing, so you are not in a full flight for the whole time frame. However, when it goes to 110%, it does not mess around. It sucks you in with the beautiful visuals of the Australian deep desert, engages you with the special effects that it is known for, and then kicks it out of the park with each new scenario. Can I please recommend you see this film on the most giant screen you are able to, because you will want to feel the roar of the motors reverberate in your seat as the chase begins. It is at this point that we must acknowledge that Chris Hemsworth exists and how this might be the best role he has ever done, or at least the best role I have personally seen him in. The prosthetic work and the costumes combine with his acting to create something truly remarkable. There is a character that exists purely on the strength of his bravado, a frail foundation mighty and more fraught but a deep sadness in his heart. We get someone who is selfishly evil while also being deeply complex. Also, with respect to Anya Taylor-Joy, she must jump into what is an iconic role and carry the second half of Thea film all by herself. Each of Thea vignettes has a different energy, and do you think which one you like the most will be very personal. For me, I liked Thea opening sequence as we raced across Thea desert, even though you know how it will end. Some of you still hoped it would work out. One of the small things was how everyone instinctively scavenged or destroyed everything that fell near them. From an action perspective, 3 is also the flying convoy, which might be the most George Miller thing that has ever George Miller read. Also, Bullet Tona showed how they learned from the experience of Fury Road what needs to be practical and what works as a visual effect. From a production perspective, it is just as good as the series has ever been. Tom Hillenborg's musical score you hit just as hard, but they also know when silence is just as important. Thea production design is better than just about everything out there at Thea moment. It feels like a real world only very much grounded in its Australian setting. It also helps that every actor is here for it and it shows. While it was great to see George Miller explore more character work in this series, only an area where the film does suffer is in the pacing. The end feels oddly rushed and there is a scene where I am slightly concerned about its construction and use of I which I hope I am wrong about. Also, it does take a bit to get going, but I don't mind that, in the end. Do we recommend Furiosa, a Mad Max saga? Yes, we would. Now you need to go into the film not expecting it to be Fury Road. It is a different film, however. It captivated me from the opening zoom into Australia and never let me go. If you liked a Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, we would recommend to you Dune Part 2. Georgia Miller never really went away for 30 years between Mad Max movies like it was implied upon the release of Fury Road. The original trilogy were 3 of the first 4 movies of the 13 he directed in his 45 years career. He also adapted a John Updike's novel The Witches of Eastwick, made a miserable biopic starring Nick Neely called Lorenzo's Oil and Somehow Babe. Yes, the Childrena movie about the little pig. My point is George Miller is not a genius, but he managed the lifespan of a great idea like one. There was no way Fury Road wouldn't work because it basically captured the thrills of the original with the technical means and creative sensibilities of a different era. In many ways, it was probably more like the movie he originally envisioned Road Warrior to be than even the original Road Warrior. In that sense, Furiosa, a Mad Max story, had no chance in hell to recapture the buzz over Fury Road. It did a decent job at being the cinematographic equivalent of an expansion pack for it. It's not great, but it's alright, and perhaps it should stop there for a couple other decades until we have something more to say about the collapse of society and the end of the world. Furiosa, a Mad Max story is exactly what the title says. It is an origin story of a Furiosa. Anya Taylor-Joy, originally played by Charlize Theron, a one-armed wasteland warrior who grew up as a hostage to a weird biker hilariously named Dementus, played with remarkably nuance by Chris Hemsworth, who happened to murder her mom. He ends up trading her to Fury Road's villain, Immortan Joe, a Lachy Hulme, where she proves herself as a useful soldier until she finally gets a shot at getting even with her old foe. Furiosa, a Mad Max story's bestest and worst problem is that it's exactly what you think it is, a 2 hours long empowering feminist film that lives in a borrowed paradigm. I don't want to about female empowerment. Women have earned to have their own tales, but this film deserved to have more of an identity of its own. There's more than one way to be badass, but this iteration of Furiosa was closer to Max from Fury Road than she was to Charlize Theron's character. So the movie ends up being a long, slickly shot series of action scenes with 1 or 2 atmospheric corkers put for good use. It's always a Hemsworth leading them, but it's a great series of slickly shot action scenes. It's fun. It's cartoonish, And there's even a long chase scene that really could have been recycled from a Fury Road. I'm generally trying to judge a movie for what it is, but my problem with Furiosa, a Mad Max story, is that it's nothing precise, at least not in essence. Its identity markers are superficial, but it's good. It's competent. There's a great action scene in a place called the Bullet Farm where a motorcycle, a van, and a monster truck face off. It's breathless and alive, but it's also cartoonish at the same time. Whenever there's a sandstorm rising, a Furiosa, a Mad Max story takes an atmospheric quality it should have nurtured more. I also loved the religious subtext surrounding Dementus, which was a nice detail nuancing and otherwise wacky character. He was ambiguous until he wasn't. What about the feminism? Right? What about Furiosa's deliverance? Well, she doesn't do a lot of talking throughout the movie, and she does most of it when she's a child, but I found the great impactful moments to be fine, but kind of overwrought. It required workshopping. That's what happened when you have a movie claiming to be feminist being essentially written by two men. It means well, but it's drained dry of spontaneity. It crumbles under the weight of its own self-imposed responsibility. Whatever happened to Patty Jenkins? Who nailed it with the first Wonder Woman? Was she unavailable for consultation? It's a minor tragedy because stuff like that should not attract attention to itself. It should be weaved into the fabric of a movie and almost to subconsciously affect people it's targeted towards. But Furiosa, a Mad Max story, makes in big neon letters the check it's too self-conscious to cash. It's not the first time Warner Brothers drops the ball like this. Maybe we should cool it with the ideological marketing. I guess that I didn't really like Furiosa, a Mad Max story. I wanted to like it more than I did. But can you really enjoy a movie that delivers exactly what you think it's going to deliver and not in a specifically slick or empowering way? Had it not taken 9 years to make, I would have said it was just a rush to cash in. Apparently, George Miller wanted to film this movie back to back with Fury Road also, which kind of makes sense. It just feels very weird, a derivative, and disconnected despite how being technically tip-top. If you're going to make a film that champions women empowerment, make one that matters. It takes a genuinely special kind of genius to make a prequel that's also the 5th film in a series and the first one of those films to be in direct unambiguous narrative continuity with one of the others and still have the main takeaway be this is unprecedented and unexpected in every possible way, and whatever I thought this was going to be, it wasn't that. Music, and it was better. We do not, I hope, have to still doubt whether George Miller is a genius, particularly when he's making a Mad Max film, and despite my early apostasy in thinking that his latest film was a bad idea when I first heard about it, he still can't feel any real surprise that a Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, is extremely good. Moreover, it is extremely good in ways that find the 79-year-old director continuing to do new stuff with this material. 45 years after the first Mad Max and 42 years after Mad Max 2 sort of invented the post-apocalyptic action movie, or at any rate created the specific template that approximately 9,000 subsequent filmmakers ripped off. What is, I think, a surprise, and a pretty good one, is that one of the main ways that Furiosa is an unpredictably zigzag for the Mad Max series is that it's actually much closer to a direct evolution from Miller's last film, a 2022's 3,000 Years of Longing. It may in fact not be too idiotic of a reach to call it something like a remake of that movie using the world building and color palette of 2015's Mad Max, Fury Road. Whether that sounds like the generous compliment I mean for to be is undoubtedly a matter of personal taste, but I think it fits. 3,000 Years of Longing at its core is a story in chapters about the transmission of myths across time. So too is Furiosa, and to be sure, the idea of myth-making and understanding the present moment as the culmination of a mythic story into actually new to the Mad Max series. Mad Max 2 is explicitly about this, and Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome is implicitly Buddha getting pretty overt about this as well. What sets Furiosa agently apart from those two films and puts it closer to a 3,000 years of longing is that the subject of the myth is the protagonist's own life history, and the construction of the myth is a conscious act on the character's part. Mad Max 2 is told from a perspective in which Max has already become the stuff of myth. Furiosa is told from a perspective within the myth itself, and there are more straightforward lifts from 3,000 years than that. The most readily obvious is that Miller and co-writer Nicole Latha have structured their screenplay as a collection of 5 chapters separated by lengthy ellipses that condense many years, though not in this case 3,000 of them, into what ends up feeling rather like a collection of extended anecdotes than a conventionally well-built story. It's so precisely the opposite of Fury Road's structure of 2 uninterrupted hours of a single chase scene that you wonder if it's intentional. I am absolutely certain that the one big car chase set piece here is precisely the opposite of Fury Road on purpose. Thought this is mostly irrelevant to how well you think it works in this context for a movie. The way that Miller and Olateries allow us to drop in and soak up the grand music, doom-saturated vibes of this epic about life in a post-apocalyptic Australia is an exceptionally rewarding way to speedrun the cultural evolution of that post-apocalypse, which was done in greater length across the first 4 Mad Max movies while preserving the fairy tale-like feeling of an endless present. The other big lift from 3,000 years is that this has some Nazi technique. In the wake of the immaculate precision and purity of Fury Road, this generally has much stranger cameras set up UPS. And if the whole point of the 2015 movie, or at least so oversimplifying marketing campaign, was to celebrate practical filmmaking, Furiosa is apparently motivated by Miller's delight in learning how much latitude digital production and post-production can give him. There was some grousing in the run-up to Furiosa's release. I contributed to it, but not in a print and not publicly, that it looked a pretty CGI forward, and this turns out to have been entirely missing the point. Not because the CGI looks fake, as you would say that it mostly doesn't at all, but because overly processed digital visuals are something this movie is leaning into as part of its aesthetic strategy. It has a kind of janky, unsteady quality, one that makes it feel, and I apologize to my Australian readership, more Australian in some way, more in tune with the loopy cartoons of that nation's weird and wonderful history of eccentric exploitation cinema. Fury Road erases its Australianness in a way that no other Mad Max film does. In contrast, I have never been more keenly aware since the first Mad Max of where this is meant to take place. That has a lot to do with the script. It has an enormous amount to do with Chris Hemsworth's unhinged and delightful performance as this movie's crazy wasteland lunatic body guy, Dementus, but I frankly think it has a lot to do with the giddiness and let's just try it. Haha, no. But it was cool, so keep it anyway. Quality to the emulous sloppiness that makes everything feel like it's vibrating a little bit. Much of the greatest Australian cinema into mercilessly perfect the way Fury Road is. It has an aesthetic grayness that Furiosa has managed to recreate, despite an exorbitant budget that has obliged it, at least ostensibly, to be a globally appealing tentpole. But back to that fascinating storytelling technique here, in which we get little slices of mythic time that evolve, and the titular character played as a child by Alyla Browne as a young woman by Anna Taylor-Joy, from savvy child of the post-apocalyptic wasteland to the unyielding force of survivalist idealism played by Charlize Theron in the previous movie. The crafty thing about this is that it manages to be a character study while also treating the character more as the shoulder we're riding on to tour this world. In essence, Furiosa's character development is less about a conventional narrative arc per se than it is about growing more sophisticated in navigating the landscape. And this is expressed through the film. Not necessarily by the things that Furiosa does, but in the amount and the clarity of detail in the world building and narrative. In other words, The first a chapter where she is relatively innocent as the most vague and vibes-driven. And by the end, we have a fairly complex understanding of the political maneuvering of the major powers at play here and in Fury Road. And the complexity does not necessarily come through Furiosa, but the more we learn about the shape and function of the world, the more power she has to control her own fate within it. As someone for whom good, dense, sophisticated world building is a top-tier pleasure of a genre film, I am frankly beside by how well Furiosa deepens its universe, and it does so in a way where it's always pretty clear what's happening, but never in a hand-holding. As we both know, Mr. the Bullet Farmer, the way that gasoline is rationed in this political. It's the kind of filmic storytelling where the filmmakers are controlling our knowledge pretty precisely, but at the same time, it feels like we get to be clever for picking up on the details. And that is a wonderful place for a popcorn movie to get to. Of course, Furiosa gets to cheat on all of this by being a direct prequel, though in a different way than I was expecting. It does at the end in a brief epilogue get us exactly to the point where it stitches up to Fury Road music. And this is one of its weakest aspects. Another one is that I think the version of Furiosa we meet here is less interesting than the one I always understood from that movie. My read on the Furiosa was that she was complicit with the horrible regime we saw as a matter of her own comfort, and the events of that movie were her act of contrition. Now, we find that she was in fact planning to destroy the regime more or less the whole time as her own survival permitted. But for the most part, and unlike so many popcorn movie prequels, Furiosa never feels like it's trying to set up Fury Road. It's more that it's assuming Fury Road so that I can jump ahead of the point where it has to lay all of the foundations and just to get right to broadening and deepening of the material built upon Thuzia foundations, rather than feeling like a cautious prequel that exists only to satisfy fans by filling in minor details. Furiosa feels like the story George Miller genuinely wanted to tell. It's an epic that spans years, following one determined soul struggling to survive in an unforgiving world. The fact that this story happens to unfold within the already established Mad Max universe simply gives Miller the perfect backdrop for his ambitious vision. As a return to the world of Mad Max, the film is nothing short of extraordinary. Jenny Bevan's costumes once again do remarkable work, visually reflecting the resources, cultures, and identities of the different factions. Production designer Colin Gibson expands the universe with incredible attention to detail, particularly through the introduction of Gastown. It's one of the most convincing post-apocalyptic locations ever put on screen, feeling like a larger, more fully realized evolution of the central settlement from Mad Max 2. The film's signature car chase at the heart of every Mad Max movie is another major triumph. Instead of relying on the lightning-fast, tightly edited style of Fury Road, Miller takes a different approach. Long, fluid camera movements allow every vehicle, stunt, and mechanical element to unfold naturally, making the action easier to follow while showcasing the intricate choreography behind each sequence. That isn't to diminish the work of editor Margaret Sixel and co-editor Elliot Knopman. Their editing is exceptional throughout the film, both during the action scenes and in the quieter dramatic moments. What's especially fascinating is how analytical editing gives way to analytical camera movement. Even with a relentless pace, the visuals remain clear and purposeful. I never expected Furiosa to reinvent the Mad Max chase sequence, nor did it need to in order to justify its place in a franchise already known for some of cinema's greatest action scenes. Yet it somehow introduces an entirely new way of staging these iconic chases. That achievement perfectly reflects a film that consistently goes above and beyond throughout its ambitious, and largely well-paced, runtime. If you've ever studied Greek literature, you may remember that Homer's epics are often defined by their opening words. The Odyssey is the story of a man, while the Iliad begins with a concept of wrath, rage, or fury. George Miller's films hardly need words at all. Yet Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, serves as the Iliad to Fury Road's stripped-down Odyssey. The straightforward journey of the earlier film is replaced with a sweeping, chapter-based narrative that explores the interconnected societies, rival factions, and shifting power structures of the post-apocalyptic wasteland. Through it all, Furiosa remains the determined hero holding onto her humanity in a brutal world. Reducing Furiosa to a single word would undersell it, just as it would Homer's epics. Like the countless patched-together vehicles that roam its wasteland, the film assembles ideas from myth, history, and action cinema into something uniquely its own. Viewing it as a story about the endless cycle of war and cruelty that transformed civilization into a wasteland reveals a film that's far more than a simple origin story. It certainly delivers that. But it also speaks the language of epic storytelling, confronting timeless human failures while preserving a fragile sense of hope. Naturally, its broader narrative demands a more complex structure than Fury Road. Even so, Miller and co-writer Nico Lathuris refused to burden the audience with excessive exposition or endless references to established lore. We don't need detailed explanations of how the world collapsed or how Furiosa earned her name. Instead, the filmmakers focus on the wonderfully bizarre details that make this universe feel alive. We meet unforgettable characters with names like Pissboy, Scrotus, Tojo, and Smeg. Strange flying machines drift across the wasteland, while a horrifying maggot farm flashes briefly across the screen. These moments may be irrelevant to the plot, but they're exactly the kinds of details that give the world its unforgettable personality. More importantly, the story never loses sight of its emotional core. Everything we learn about this harsh world comes through Furiosa's perspective. From the moment she is abducted from the green place of many mothers as a child until the events leading directly into Fury Road, her journey is one of relentless survival. As she grows from the traumatized young Furiosa, played by Alyla Browne, into the hardened warrior portrayed by Anya Taylor-Joy, she endures slavery within the Citadel, fights her way onto a trade convoy, and patiently waits for the opportunity to take revenge on her captor, the ruthless biker warlord Dementors, played by Chris Hemsworth. While Immortan Joe rules with the distant authority of a god, Dementors is something entirely different, a charismatic yet deeply unstable tyrant whose reckless cruelty reflects a man treating the wasteland as his personal playground. Both men see Furiosa as someone who belongs within their inner circle, whether as an heir, a prized possession, or something in between. She refuses both. Alyla Browne and Anya Taylor-Joy deliver performances that feel seamlessly connected, creating a believable portrait of one woman shaped by years of suffering. Browne's Furiosa is fierce, instinctive, and ready to strike, while Taylor-Joy brings a quieter confidence and hardened precision. Charlie Fraser also leaves a lasting impression as Furiosa's mother, providing the emotional foundation that echoes throughout the story. Together, all three actresses communicate extraordinary emotion through little more than their expressions. Their piercing stares carry immense weight, revealing strength, grief, determination, and vulnerability without the need for many words. In fact, Furiosa may speak even less here than she does in Fury Road, making the performances all the more remarkable. Combined with George Miller's striking visual compositions, she often resembles a mythical figure, a part avenging angel, part graphic novel icon. Every hard edge of her personality seen in Fury Road is sharpened here, while every glimpse of compassion is given richer emotional depth. Ultimately, Furiosa is defined not only by who she is, but also by the villains she resists and the few allies she chooses to protect. That contrast lies at the heart of George Miller's grand vision, a story about broken systems, the people trapped within them, and the extraordinary strength required to fight against them. The world of Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, is built on clashing powers and ruthless ambition. Everything changes when Dementors storms into the fragile alliance connecting Immortan Joe's fertile citadel, the ammunition-rich bullet farm, and the fuel-producing gas town. Riding his bizarre motorcycle chariot complete with a gruesome nod to the fate of Hector from Greek mythology, Dementors throws the entire wasteland into chaos. His arrival ignites a brutal conflict, and through Furiosa's relentless pursuit of freedom. We witness both the personal and political cost of war. While the battles are spectacular, the film's true focus lies in the struggles between power-hungry leaders whose ambitions reshape the lives of ordinary people. As Furiosa patiently waits for her opportunity, the world around her sinks further into violence and disorder. George Miller doesn't suggest that life under previous dictators was ideal, but he does show how destructive power struggles hurt those with the least control. Countless war boys die in meaningless battles, while the desperate survivors are left fighting over even fewer resources. Unlike Mad Max, Fury Road, Furiosa spends more time with the people trapped inside these brutal systems. Miller uses their suffering to create a mythic story that feels timeless because it reflects struggles that have existed throughout human history. This makes Furiosa's relationships especially powerful. Her bond with Praetorian Jack, played by Tom Burke, grows from reluctant trust into genuine loyalty and respect. Their connection offers a rare glimpse of hope in an otherwise merciless world and beautifully lays the emotional foundation for Furiosa's later partnership with Max. On the other hand, her relationship with Dementos pushes her toward hatred and revenge, threatening to consume her entirely. Chris Hemsworth delivers one of the strongest performances of his career as Dementos. The character is unpredictable, charismatic, terrifying, and strangely entertaining all at once. One moment he's delivering theatrical villain speeches, and the next he's laughing maniacally as bullets fly around him. Hemsworth balances humor, cruelty, and insecurity, creating a villain who is both larger than life and deeply flawed. Although the action is less constant than in Fury Road, George Miller hasn't lost his talent for directing unforgettable set pieces. Simon Duggan's cinematography keeps the camera in constant motion, racing across vehicles, diving toward danger, and capturing every explosion with remarkable energy. Bright colors burn across the screen while seamless transitions between day and night create a dreamlike atmosphere. The vehicle chases remain breathtaking, the practical stunts are astonishing, and the visual effects range from spectacularly stylized to almost completely invisible. Every action sequence is carefully designed so the audience always understands what's happening, whether it's warriors swarming a moving war rig, bizarre flying machines attacking from above, or desperate mechanics risking everything to keep engines alive. Every movement has a clear purpose. This visual clarity is what makes the action so effective. Even amid complete chaos, Miller never sacrifices storytelling for spectacle. Every chase, rescue mission, and battle follows its own internal logic, allowing viewers to fully appreciate the stunning images of this post-apocalyptic nightmare. Ultimately, Furiosa stands apart from many modern prequels because it never feels like an afterthought or a simple attempt to capitalize on an existing franchise. It unfolds at a slower pace than the relentless precision of Mad Max, Fury Road, but that slower rhythm allows it to expand the mythology in meaningful ways. If Fury Road is an epic odyssey, then Furiosa feels like the tragic legend that came before it. Together, the films explore universal themes of love and loss, revenge and forgiveness, power and rebellion. George Miller strips these mythic stories down to their emotional core, creating modern folklore driven by raw human emotion as much as roaring engines and burning fuel. Very few films earn the title of masterpiece immediately after release, and even fewer maintain that reputation over time. Mad Max, Fury Road, 2015, achieved exactly that, quickly becoming one of the most acclaimed action films ever made thanks to its breathtaking direction, non-stop momentum, incredible practical effects, and surprising emotional depth. That naturally raises an important question. Could any follow-up possibly meet those extraordinary expectations? Furiosa, the Mad Max saga certainly faces an enormous challenge. Set years before Fury Road, the story takes place long after civilization has collapsed. Australia has become a harsh, radioactive wasteland where only a handful of places still possess fertile land and clean water. One of these rare sanctuaries is the green place of many mothers, where young Furiosa enjoys a peaceful childhood. That peace is shattered when a violent biker gang kidnaps her and delivers her to their ruthless leader. Dementas, portrayed by Chris Hemsworth, driven by an insatiable desire to dominate the wasteland. Dementas murders Furiosa's mother, Mary Jo Bassa, played by Charlie Fraser, after her failed rescue attempt. From that moment, Furiosa must learn to survive in one of the world's harshest environments while holding on to two goals: avenging her mother and one day finding her way home. Unlike most long-running franchises, the Mad Max series has never relied on strict continuity. George Miller has always presented these stories as legendary tales passed down through generations, with Max himself portrayed as a mythical hero whose exploits grow larger with every retelling. Furiosa embraces that tradition more than ever. While it connects directly to the events of Mad Max, Fury Road, it also draws inspiration from Greek, Roman, Norse, and Chinese mythology, reinforcing the idea that these stories have become legends within their own world. The film delivers plenty of spectacular action, including explosive vehicle chases, massive shootouts, and thrilling crashes. Even approaching 80 years old, George Miller directs action with a level of creativity and excitement that surpasses many younger filmmakers. One criticism, however, is the increased reliance on computer-generated imagery. Although Mad Max, Fury Road also used significant CGI, it primarily enhanced practical stunts and seamlessly connected real-world effects. In Furiosa, many sequences appear more digitally created, making the visual effects slightly more noticeable. Even so, when judged on its own merits rather than against the nearly impossible standard set by Fury Road, the film still delivers visuals that outshine most modern blockbusters. As a prequel, the film also faces familiar storytelling challenges. Since audiences already know Furiosa's ultimate fate, there's naturally less uncertainty surrounding her journey. Like many prequels, the story occasionally explains the origins of her iconic weapons, appearance, and abilities. Fortunately, George Miller avoids letting those details become the film's main focus, instead crafting an emotionally satisfying and genuinely compelling adventure. That said, Furiosa works best for viewers who have already seen Mad Max, Fury Road, as many of its emotional payoffs rely on that existing connection. Character development also distinguishes the film from its predecessor. While Fury Road balanced non-stop action with subtle emotional storytelling, Furiosa deliberately adopts a slower, more reflective pace. Rather than trying to surpass its predecessor's relentless energy, it chooses to explore its characters and themes more deeply. Instead of placing audiences in the middle of every battle, the film often observes conflicts from a distance, emphasizing preparation, consequence, and emotional aftermath rather than constant spectacle. Some viewers may wish more action remained on screen, but this approach encourages reflection on the philosophical themes that George Miller openly explores throughout the film. Like every great myth, Furiosa ultimately succeeds because of its heroes and villains. Charlize Theron created one of modern cinema's most memorable action heroes with her portrayal of Furiosa in Mad Max, Fury Road, leaving Anya Taylor-Joy with enormous expectations to meet. Fortunately, she delivers an outstanding performance, convincingly portraying Furiosa's transformation from determined survivor to relentless avenger and, ultimately, a legendary hero. Chris Hemsworth is equally impressive as Dementas, creating a villain who is cruel, manipulative, strangely humorous, and completely unpredictable. His incompetence as a leader makes him no less dangerous. In fact, it makes him even more fascinating. Tom Burke also leaves a strong impression as Praetorian Jack, serving as a spiritual counterpart to Max. Although his role could have benefited from additional development, his quiet strength and emotional connection with Furiosa become some of the film's most memorable moments. Directed and co-written by George Miller, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga was produced by Doug Mitchell under Kennedy Miller Mitchell, with cinematography by Simon Duggan, editing by Elliot Knappman, and a powerful musical score by Tom Holkenborg. Junkie XL. Distributed by Warner Brothers Pictures, the film was released on May 15, 2024, with a running time of 148 minutes, an estimated $168 million budget, and a worldwide box office total of $174.4 million. Furiosa may not have matched the commercial success of its predecessor, but it stands as an ambitious, visually stunning, and emotionally rich addition to George Miller's extraordinary Mad Max universe.